Welcome back to the Human Nexus podcast. My name is Andrew Brazis. I'm a business and marketing consultant and private chef.
Welcome back. My name is Miss Laura Machiste. I am a YouTube tarot reader, holistic massage therapist, and energy coach. And today we have a guest on. Olivia, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what you do, who you are?
Yeah, thank you both for having me. This is such an honor. My name is Olivia Lehman, she, her pronouns, and I am a somatic therapist, embodiment coach, and a licensed therapist here in Seattle, Washington. And I also love to cook and to dance and pull tarot cards. So I think we're going to have a good conversation.
Oh, yes, I love that.
So, Olivia, get into your work stuff a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, right now, like I mentioned, I'm a licensed therapist, so that's my main gig. I work with clients one-on-one, and a lot of times people will ask me, what does a somatic session look like? And it's really not different from how a normal talk therapy session might begin. If you go into therapy, usually you sit down, you talk about what happened that week, what has activated you, or who's pissing you off at work, or how your boyfriend might have come home from work or something. And we get into that. And what I do is usually I'm tracking kind of what's happening in the room, the energy, the emotions, and if there is some sort of emotion that comes up, usually I see if we can move that. So I might ask the client to, actually get up and start shaking or start expressing some of the anger or really be met in the sadness of, if the sadness is there. So it's moment to moment. It looks different for everyone, which keeps my job really interesting. And then outside of seeing clients one-on-one, I also am doing different kind of like pop-up events around the city where I call them unblocking sessions. So we do a little bit of yoga, like really slow movement to just stretch the body and open up all the different channels of the body. And then we start to get into movement of some of the energy. So we do a lot of what I do with clients one-on-one where we shake. We might move some of the anger. We find our no, like our expressive no. Those are really powerful sessions as well, but more so in the group setting. And I don't know if either of you have been in group settings before in like a therapeutic sense, but it can bring up so much and it's so powerful to
I
have
have
those
not.
moments.
Have you, Laura?
Yeah, when I did the breath work in person, it was more of like a group thing, although it was more of a independent type of way of being. It was still like in a group, but nothing like how you're explaining on that type of level where you're like interacting with each other and stuff like that. There's like a slight interaction and then it's like into the journey and then like a little bit of an interaction when you leave, but nothing that's like interconnected with each other. No, not necessarily.
Yeah, but even moving breath together can be such a powerful thing to
Right.
just know, like, oh, I'm doing this deep breathing with another person that might be able to get you even farther in that journey, which is really, really powerful.
Yeah, and especially with groups like that, do you ever find that there are certain people there in those groups that connect to other people there and it's just kind of like that synchronized alignment where that person had information that that person needed to hear? Like have you found any of that in your group settings?
Yeah, this might actually be a little bit of a spoiler for anyone that comes on a retreat with me, but I'll do that anyways. So I host these matriarch retreats or embodied feminine retreats a couple times a year, and what we do at the beginning is I have everyone write down a question that they have for just whatever they're bringing, wherever they're at. And then at the end of the retreat, usually I pass out cards again, and people will write down the answer to that question that they had. And then I collect all of those cards and I pass them back out randomly to all the different people. And people will then go around and read the question that they originally had, but then they'll read the answer that somebody else had. And usually there's something really magical about that was the answer that they were looking for, but it wasn't their own. And
That's
it's
insane.
it's so crazy how, it really comes together. I mean, for, one example, the last time I did this, I did that exercise, and one person wrote down, I think they just wrote down, like, I don't have an answer yet. And the question was around family. Like, I don't know what to do with my family or something like that. And the person who read the card and said, "Oh, I don't know what to do yet," was like the perfect answer, because she was like, "I need more time to actually digest and not jump into like all the fixing, and that's what I normally do." So I feel like those answers can just be such gold when we come together and we support each other in those answers,
Yeah, that's a really cool exercise to do. It kind of reminds me of how like I'll randomly experiment with things. It's kind of like a group experiment to see who gets what, who receives the answers they need there. And like a lot of the times it is something that could have been thought of, but needed to be thought of by another towards, I guess, whoever received the card of the answer. But that's awesome. That's super like creative as well, and like an out of the box type of idea to do with group settings.
Yeah, and I can't take credit for that. I I did pick that up from one of my teachers, but
But
yeah,
that
it's
happens. You take everything you learned and you put it all together.
exactly. Yeah. We can't all be originals.
Right.
Yeah, another thing that is really cool in group settings is that usually when you walk into a room and you don't know anyone in the room, what our brains naturally do is we pick up on what looks familiar. So you might look across the room. I mean, I did this when you jumped on the call. I was like, we look like sisters. You look like a Greek family member that I have. And that's a form of trying to keep my mind and body safe. We all subconsciously do this so that we can feel like, oh, we have a connection here, even if we don't know anyone. So that happens in group settings, and then we get triggered by people that may have not even done anything to us, but we just remember that somebody harmed us, so we might stay away from people that look like this category of a person. And what's cool about that in a therapeutic setting is we can work with that. Like, oh, this person triggers you probably because you have some sort of like mass image, is what we call it in my line of work. And yeah, I mean, it's just so cool how we can really
To
unpack
go
that.
off what you just said, which I don't want to forget to connect it, it's actually so interesting that you indicated that image. Because when I was growing up, my dad had a beard, so I only trusted men who had a beard.
Right. That's
If
so
they were clean
interesting.
shaven, I was like scared of them, like
Yeah.
fearful. It was weird.
Yeah. And that's what we all do, right? Like when, if you're like on a hike, I mean, a lot of us hike out here in Seattle, and you cross someone and, you see like a group of men, for instance, as a woman, a lot of times I'm like, okay, I gotta like have my guard up, and I'm seeing all these men, and the picture that I have of men, and I've worked a lot around this, but there's just this big fear factor that happens in my body. And that's kind of the basis of core energetics, which is the work that I do somatically. And we try to just unpack that fear, unpack the stories behind that, and see like what is the specific fear that built that image. Because that can really block us from relating to people and actually seeing them and being present with, oh, even though you don't have a beard, maybe you're a nice guy, you know?
Do you have any connections between like the somatic work and then like your spiritual practices? Like maybe in the like retreats that you run, do you put that into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I feel like at my retreats, that's when I really get to let loose and really have all my witchy, like spiritual side come out because we can really have the space for that and do a lot with that. But I would say in my one-to-one sessions, I mean, I'm even before folks walk in, you know, I'm burning Palo Santo, and I'm maybe even saying a prayer because I need to get out of my own way so that I can actually, kind of like what I was just saying, really see and be present with the client so I'm not thinking about my own story and kind of getting in the way of what their story is or what they're actually feeling. So I mean, a lot of times, you know, I'm sitting with a client and I'm maybe picking up on an image or I'm picking up on a feeling in my body. I'm actually thinking right now of sitting with a client. This might be TMI to share on a podcast, but whatever. Right before I saw this client, almost every time I was like having terrible diarrhea. And I was like, what is happening? And it kept happening. And I thought, maybe I'm just nervous. I don't know. But my body was like responding. And finally, I brought it up. I said something about like how, yeah, I'm having like all this unrest in my belly. I didn't want to go into the diarrhea part. She started talking about her trauma when she had labor and all of this like all these unsettled feelings that she had in her belly that she never felt comfortable to talk about. And we finally got to get there. And I'm not saying I don't want to say I have this like superpower and I like know all about the body, but it opened a door that, a lot of times people may have ignored, or I'm feeling a lot because they're not actually feeling it. And after we had that conversation, I mean, I didn't feel that unsettled feeling in my belly anymore. So yeah, so crazy how that stuff
That is
comes in.
really crazy. Laura, you do a lot of body work too. Do you have anything? I don't know. Like, I feel like you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so first and foremost, you do know about your body because it's your body. So don't give yourself some credit there. And in terms of what you mentioned with the digestive and stuff like that, and like kind of being in the orbit or close to being in the orbit of that person, giving you the sense of what could be going on with them, that happens all the time. All the time. If I don't disconnect to someone's body, and they were having left shoulder pain that was connected to a best friend that they lost or something like that, they'll feel better. If I don't disconnect correctly, now I have the shoulder pain. So it is absolutely transferable. And whether like the knowledge of the body is there or not, you have the awareness. Like, that that's not something that you're dealing with on the daily or something that happens all the time. You were able to like pinpoint that to that individual and say, I'm usually fine, except for when this person, I'm about to see them, which is like, no, you have power, you have gift. Like, that's just what it is. And I definitely understand that whole like, right, well, this is what I've known from research and knowledge and study. But you have a body, you have a conscious, you have the awareness. So it's just kind of really just probably unlocking more of the gift for you. And although it was a pun intended shitty experience, it did give you a sense of, oh, wow, I was right. My body knew. Even though the brain didn't connect, the body was able to figure out. So you probably have like a deeper sense of gift that is playing out and being unlocked through you being a therapist, which you probably already know.
It definitely was a confirmation for sure. And it has given me confidence to bring stuff like that up with clients. Thankfully, I haven't had a serious of, like digestive issues or anything like that. It's usually a lot more subtle and I have to really tune into it. But yeah, I'm curious for you, like, do you have any practices to get you into that place of feeling that, transference or, yeah.
I wish I could turn it on and off, honestly. If I could, I would. But
Yeah.
like I told Andrew now for a couple, like almost half a year now that I've known him, I don't have explanations for it. I'll just see things, I'll feel things, and
Yeah.
I don't really like try per se. But when I do try, it's kind of just like the same thing. I almost feel like when I try, I have a little bit more of imposter syndrome because I feel like I had to try, opposed to when it
Mm.
just like comes to me.
Mm.
Through the journey, it helped me realize like what to do with this, where to work it, and I'm sure like how you do as well. Like not everybody gets the spiritual side when you're in front of them. Not like
Mhm.
like levels of what you give to them. So I kind of feel like it has to do with the person I'm working with. Like if they have some type of like angelic energy with them or some type of like spirit guide, and I feel like whoever tries to come in to guide them through me, and I kind of feel like it's just the messenger aspect, if that makes sense.
Right.
I wish I had the on and off of like trying and being like, okay, here's an energy work session, turn it on. But
Mhm.
possibly that's something that is like next on my journey because an off switch would be very beneficial to my
Right.
overall health and well-being. So
Right. Right.
I'm
So you
sure
feel like
hopefully
it's always
eventually.
on, like it's always here.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's really awesome. I'm sure your friends can appreciate that to some degree too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as much as I possibly, it's just weird. It's like unexplainable. And I wish I had like an explanation for it. Hopefully, maybe one day I will. But it's just something that I'll be next to someone and I'll be like, you want to have popcorn tonight? And they're like, how'd you know I want popcorn? And I'm like, I don't know. I just thought of it when I saw your face.
Right. And also popcorn. Who says no to that,
Right. Exactly. So it's just like weird things that happen. And I do have an indication where, like, I knew this a while ago that I don't say things for no reason. And sometimes I'll say things and I have no idea why. And then I'll find out later on. And same thing with like my practice. Sometimes I'll tell people, I'm like, you want to know what I've read from your energy or not? And some people
Mm,
say yes. Some people I don't even ask because I can see it on their face that it's a no.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it is like, is someone ready for this kind of information? It's really about reading reading the room and understanding where they're at and yeah, and so a lot of times I'm doing that through questioning and really figuring out how they're coming in, what they're ready for. I mean, a lot of times a part of the job with being a psychoanalyst is that I'm making all these connections with their childhood and it's not channeling, it's really just like, here's an assumption. And that can be a lot for some people. So any of that information can be overwhelming, spiritual or just analytical.
Is this something that's been like new for you? Like, did you like recently discover that you're like, I don't know if channeling's the right word, but I don't know, you're like picking up on these other people's energies in this way? Or is this something that I think I'm asking because I mean, like I've experienced similar things like when I was younger and I just learned on my own to be like, okay, this is something different than my own experience. And I think Laura has something somewhat similar. So like for
Mm.
you, is this a new, I don't know, experience, or is this something that you've experienced in the past, but then you were like, no, that's not it.
Yeah, so this gift, this talent, whatever you want to call it, I think really was picked up in the church. I mean, when I was in the evangelical church, there was a big push around, at least in my denomination, around being prophetic. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And I believed that some of those interactions happened. I would go up to people and people I didn't know, and I would I would know about something physical. Usually it was always physical, like, oh, I know you have a headache right now that you've had for a week or something like that. And then I would pray with them, and it would be this really spiritual moment. You know, I don't subscribe to Christianity now, but I think those gifts have transferred into, you know, kind of the work that I do now. And there was a time where I cut that part off of my life and thought, oh, that's the Christianity bucket. I don't want to listen to that. But I think there's something spiritual that's definitely happening when you're picking up on something from somebody else in your own body. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was your deconstruction process like? Or have you?
Diving
Are
in
you?
there. Yeah. Oh, it was really painful. I had grown up in the church since I was a baby. I mean, I was baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church, and then I went to a charismatic church for a long time with my parents. I was then a worship leader at a planted church in Indianapolis, and I had such a beautiful community. And there was one day when I showed up to church, and it was when Trump was being nominated or something to be in office. And I for sure thought, you know, this is just wrong. This doesn't fit or align with the values that we have. If we value the oppressed, and we stay with the people that are suffering, there is no way that our church, you know, aligns with what's happening politically here with all of that. And quickly realized, you know, the church was divided, and there were all these different views, and it felt so, I mean, to me, politics ties into how we see people, how we, you know, address the oppressed and all of that. And it felt really clear to me that I needed to move on from this church. And then it started to evolve into, like, what do I think of Jesus? What do I think of all of these other spiritual practices? And how do they view the oppressed? How do they view the outsiders? And started to just understand that I had all of these values that I picked up from childhood. And so I stepped away from the church. And the grieving process of that was really hard. Of course, I don't know too much about either of your history, if any, with the church, but you know, I think we can all resonate with stepping away from some sort of community and feeling like an outsider, or feeling like we've lost our people or our group. And nothing is more painful than that. I think we're all relational people. So I had to figure out what my next group was, which actually led me to yoga and to my body and to actually Hinduism at the time. I was really just diving into the next kind of community that would really hold me, which actually progressed and led me into what I'm doing now.
That was kind
Got
of
a good video to send her after.
Ooh, a video.
Yeah. It's all
excited.
about, it goes into general themes of Christianity, like Jacob's Ladder, the Christos oil, things along those lines. And you'd probably very much enjoy it because you are Greek, and they talk about Greek words constantly throughout this video. It's like 18 minutes. It blew my mind, and I think about this video all the time. I think it'd be a great watch for you. My question to you is, once you got into yoga and started more on like I guess you could say, spiritually unconfined community, where there was more just like, not like you're confined to a certain way of doing, being, seeing, and kind of routine, did you feel energetically different? Did you feel more connected to a part of yourself that you almost felt like maybe you were disconnected from for so long?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I think, you know, and I know not everyone has this experience, but I think within the church that I was in, you learn a lot about how to disembody, to not actually check in with your gut, to, basically keep your mind separate from your body's desires. And so connecting with my body was like a revolutionary act. It was kind of like this whole new world I was experiencing. I remember going to therapy for the first time after I left the church. I was sitting in my seat like this, and I was all hunched up, and my therapist was like, "Hey, do you know how you're sitting right now?" And it was like as if there was this, like you're holding the tip of a balloon and like you open it up and like all of a sudden all this air comes out. It was just like this, like, holy shit, I have like legs and arms and I can feel like what's actually happening in my body. And I had been holding this like separation from the neck down. And so it felt like I was experiencing the world all of a sudden through my hands and my toes. And that is in itself is like re-experiencing childhood again, because children are so in tune with their bodies. They're like putting their feet up in the air and they're just kind of like flailing around with their arms and having fun experiencing like the fullness of their limbs and all of that. So it was kind of like this, like, oh, I'm coming back into the world. I'm coming back into this space that I've been so cut off from. So I think with my work now, that's step one is like, do you even know where you're at with your body? Like, do you know what you're feeling when you say I'm sad? I feel like that can be such a huge moment. I mean, for anyone.
Yeah. I've experienced the very similar ways in different routes, I guess you could say, but the explanation of kind of just like feeling the world again, or just in general, it's crazy how disconnected we are when in society's way of being, they're like, no, if you're here, you're doing that, you're totally connected as much as you could be. And then when you actually get into like these different types of things, you realize that especially when people do yoga's a big thing. You don't realize how little body strength you truly have. And so you try to do or stay in a position for longer than 5 seconds. It's actually a really humbling moment for a lot of people. And I feel like going through that humbling moment of like, oh, wow, I'm totally disconnected, is either you get even more disconnected or you reconnect. So that's amazing that you reconnected and just found a new path.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been life-changing, I would say.
Olivia, what if you, I don't know, could leave anything with the people listening, watching in regards to like your spirituality and like how it's helped you kind of find yourself? Do you have any like words of wisdom there?
That's a big question. I think
is there anything that you say to a lot of clients that you could just see on their face and there's like, oh, they get it. That was the key word, or that was the key sentence, or just like anything that is like really pops out to you that you feel like would be good knowledge for anyone to know or hear or even know about yourself?
Yeah. Something I'm often sharing with clients, I think, is maybe a helpful way to frame this is, well, if I can back up. A lot of clients come in telling me that they've been to therapy for, 7 years, 10 years, whatever. And they're like, I've had this trauma I keep trying to work through, and I just I can't seem to get through it. Like I keep producing kind of the same patterns or the same habits or whatever. They've talked about it so much and they've tried to work through this thing. And what I always tell clients is, if you have a feeling or an activation around, like a certain trauma or memory, there's a difference between talking about it and actually feeling it. And that might sound really simple, but really sitting with the feeling, it's almost as if like if you felt this sadness and the sadness started to come out But then you start talking about it and then go into story, it kind of like veers off. But if you can sit with that sadness and kind of let it go around in its full circle or its full cycle, I mean, it's not like a formula, but a lot of times feelings just need to like really churn and have its full effect so that it can free up space in your body and your mind. And so that's the work that I'm constantly doing with folks, is just sitting with feelings. And I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's the hardest thing. Easier said than done. But if you feel like, yeah, I can't get through something and I feel this stuckness, sitting with those feelings is going to be revolutionary. And a lot of times we need co-regulation in those moments. So find a support person, a support group, find ways to move in your body when you're feeling those feelings. That will help progress those feelings so much more.
Do you ever add in any like tarot or astrology or anything that would be like more considered woo-woo to a, I guess, therapist licensure practice that you go through?
Yeah, I often don't. There's so much to get to in our sessions that I feel like I don't have time for tarot, but I would love to incorporate it. When I host retreats, I incorporate tarot, and that can be such an awesome added element. Really reflective, and yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of the Lord's work, even though whatever God we all believe in, you're definitely doing that indication of, spreading out the vibration of, the vibration that people want to be on and heal on, which is like super important.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like both of you are too, through food, through readings, through this podcast. So I'm really grateful to be a part of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was
thank you so
awesome
much.
having you on.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you so
you.
much,
Thanks for the
Olivia.
time.
Next time we have another guest on. So that'll be really great. Zoe, she's a podcast host out of Solace in the City, New York. So that'll be fun. Anything to add, Laura?
No, that's about it. Do you have any social media or website? Like if anybody wanted to book with you, Olivia, is that a possibility, or to go on a retreat? Like, do you have any external information that could be beneficial?
I sure do. Yeah, my Instagram is Olivia Lehman _. But you can also find me on rhythmoscollective.com. I see clients here in Washington, but then I also have opportunities for like intensives or retreats. And my next retreat is April 3rd, a embodied feminine retreat. So if you are women identifying, please come. I'd love to have you.
You travel for retreats, or you do them more or less close to where you are?
Right now I'm regional, but I am hoping in the next year, that's my next thing, is to do some East Coast retreats and then maybe one international.
Awesome. We'll look forward to that. Thank you so much, Olivia, for being on. It was awesome hearing your story and talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
you. We'll see y'all next time.
See you guys. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.